Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In this video I'll be testing one of the newest weapons to old school RuneScape, the Osmumten's Fang. I'll be testing this weapon here at the Tombs of Amasket, next, Corporeal Beast, and I think I also want to take it to the Chambers of Xeric to see how well it performs there as well. While testing, I think I want to compare it to the Garazi Rapier, as the Garazi Rapier is a level 80 attack stab weapon, and the new Osmumten's Fang is a level 82 attack stab weapon, so I feel like it's a fair comparison there, and I see a lot of people using both, so let's see how well both of them perform. For those who aren't aware, the Osmumten's Fang is a rare reward from the Tombs of Amasket. It requires level 82 attack to wield, and it is able to do full damage to the Corporeal Beast, unlike most weapons other than halberds and spears. The Fang also has two passive effects, both of which are quite good if I may add. The first passive effect basically re-rolls the accuracy if you were to miss your first accuracy check. So basically every time you attack, you get 2 rolls on the accuracy check. So it basically means you very rarely miss with this weapon because you're attacking twice in terms of accuracy every time you attack once. The second effect is a little different as it basically reduces your minimum hit, but also reduces your maximum hit. In theory, this doesn't really do much to DPS, but it does increase your consistency as you won't be getting too many high highs and you won't be getting too many low lows as you can't hit zeros, but you also can't hit your normal max hit. The Fang also has a special attack, which uses 25% of your special attack energy, and what the special attack does is instead of dealing 15 to 85% of your max hit, you deal 15 to 100% of your max hit, and then you also already get another 50% accuracy added on to your double accuracy roll. So when using the special attack, you will very rarely miss no matter what you're attacking, and you will have your actual max hit potential, which you would have if it was a normal weapon. I should also mention the Fang has 4 attack options. It has Stab Accurate Attack XP, Stab Aggressive Strength XP, Slash Aggressive Strength XP, and Defensive Stab Defense XP as well. If we go into our viewed equipment stats, you can see the stats of the Fang by itself. Very good weapon, and it is also a 5-tick weapon, so a bit slower than the Rapier that I mentioned earlier. Now that you know the basic information about the Osmumten's Fang, let's go ahead and run some DPS calculations. For DPS calculations, I decided to keep it simple and went with super combat potions. And on my left setup, I have a Void setup that is very easy to obtain. No Verdict Defender, no Infernal Cape, very simple stuff to get. And the right setup, I have the Fang with basically max strength bonus. So if you were looking for something to compare to, that is what I'm comparing here. I will also be using the Rapier as I've mentioned in this video, and I'll showcase the DPS comparison later. But for now, here is the Fang versus a lot of the bosses, and pretty much every boss I'll be testing out in this video as well. But here is the raw DPS calculations, because I'm sure a lot of you guys wanted that. And as I promised, here is the DPS calculation with the exact same setup, but with the Rapier instead of the Fang. As you can see, for every boss that I showcase here, the difference is quite massive. The Fang is better in literally every single boss that I chose to replace the Fang with Rapier with, so that's quite insane. The level 82 attack weapon is definitely making its statement very clear that it is a very good weapon, especially against high defense targets. But it isn't the best weapon everywhere, it's just the best at the specific bosses that I chose because they do have high defense. For example, if you're just doing a Slayer task, it is probably better to use your Rapier, so don't completely panic sell your Rapier, but if you do plan on doing any of the bosses that I'll be doing in this video, maybe consider picking up a Fang, and I'll show you exactly how good it is. So to start out the testing, I'll be using the Garazi Rapier to complete a 150 scaled Tombs of Amasket solo. I will be using the exact gear that you guys see on my character and what I have in my inventory, but I'll be primarily trying to use the Rapier, even where some areas where, for example, the blowpipe is better at Akkha's Shadow, I'll be using the Rapier just for a better comparison. And then after completing my one raid with the Rapier, I will also do one raid with the Fang, and we'll compare the times to kill on bosses such as Akkha, Kephri, and Baba. I also feel I should probably showcase my invocations for those curious, and here is the invocations I will be using for my test run. I found this to be a very simple 150 raid, so if you're also looking for a very simple 150 raid, maybe try this one out. Starting with the Rapier at Baba, I do want to quickly mention before getting right into it that this probably was not the best way to compare the Osmumten Fang to the Rapier, as at a 150 invocation, the defense level at the monsters was not as high as I was thinking it would be, so the difference between the Fang and the Grazi Rapier wasn't as noticeable as I was hoping it would be. Again, I am recording this not live. I've already recorded the entire thing. And I'll just let you know, Rapier actually performed quite well due to everything being decently low defense. If I was doing a 300 raid, for example, the Osmumten's Fang would absolutely outperform the Rapier by quite a bit. However, to make this comparison as accurate as possible, what I decided to do is not use any specs for this 150, so you'll notice that I'm pretty much killing it with just the Rapier. Now, as you can see in this clip, Rapier is absolutely shredding Baba. I was getting very, very fortunate on my Rapier hits. I've done a lot of 150s and I've done a lot of 300 pluses, and I really hate that the variance worked how it did here, but it is what it is. I ended up absolutely shredding Baba for a very, very good time with the Rapier. Let's just go ahead and jump to that. So yeah, as I said, Rapier absolutely shredded Baba in a 150 raid. So it really goes to show, if you are doing a 150, you don't really need the Fang. Rapier is just fine. 248, not too bad. Now let's see how well my Osmumten's Fang did. As I mentioned in the last clip, I got quite lucky with my Rapier hits, and unfortunately in this clip here, I do not get as lucky with my Osmumten's Fang's hits. The Osmumten's Fang's really, really good against high defense targets, and even against lower defense targets, you should not miss very often, and unfortunately, like I mentioned, I didn't hit very well, and I actually did miss, I think even more often than my Rapier is. So really, it's all chalked up to variance. This weapon is an extremely accurate weapon. It just has a lower max hit, but it also has a lower minimum hit, so there is that as well. There's a lot of variance that goes in with it, but I think one of the best things about the Fang is it has a lower amount of variance, and also as you start scaling up your raids, going for 200s, 250s, 300s, and going as high as you want to. You can go all the way up to 500s with the Fang. I think it's still best in slot just because of how much the Fang does not fall off. If you actually take a look at the DPS calculations, and honestly, I'll probably just show it after this clip here, of just showing the difference between the Rapier and showing the difference between the Fang at different invocation levels. The Fang just doesn't fall off, while the actual Rapier falls off quite a bit as we keep going. So as I mentioned, the kill time for this Mutant Fang was not anywhere near close to the Rapier. The kill time for the Fang ended up being a 256, and the kill time for the Rapier ended up being a 248. So with the variance, Rapier ended up being better. So as I mentioned, I did want to show the fall off of the Fang versus the Grazi Rapier. This is the same DPS calculation I was using earlier, max strength bonus, no salt, piety, everything that I showed earlier, and it is at a scale of a 150 raid. So let's start scaling the raid up and seeing how the Fang falls off and seeing how the Rapier falls off. So we started with 150, let's go ahead and throw it to a 200 scale raid, and as you can see, the Fang keeps getting slightly bit better. Let's go up to 250. And again, the Fang is falling off by 1 DPS, and I think the Rapier just fell off by 4 DPS there. Let's go all the way up to 300. Now the Rapier is 7.7 DPS, and the Fang is 8.7 DPS. I think we started with a 9.1 DPS, so that's absolutely insane. And I really, really want to emphasize how much fall off there is in comparison. So we're going from 300 now, and I'm going all the way up to a 500 scaled raid, pretty much the top of the top. And as you can see, the Fang still has basically an 8 DPS. So we lost 1 DPS scaling it from 150 to 500. And let's just say the Rapier lost quite a bit more. Though I'm actually genuinely surprised the Rapier is holding up decently well. 6.3 DPS is nothing to be ashamed of. So next up we have Akkha with the Rapier, and Akkha is a boss where you do have to use all 3 attack styles. So even though I am using the Rapier here to kill the shadows, and I'll also be using the Rapier to kill the boss whenever he is not protecting melee, I did also have to use Sang Staff and my Blowpipe, so again, a little bit of variance, and I'm not super happy with the results. However, I did do the testing, so may as well show it to you guys. The Rapier, again, since it is a 150 scale raid, performed quite well. And just like Baba, it performed a little too well, where Rapier, again, slightly out DPS'd the Fang. Very unfortunate, and I really wish now that for my testing, instead of doing a 150, I maybe scaled it up a bit. Though if I did scale it up a bit, I definitely run the risk of, while recording, making a small mistake, as the harder it gets, the more likely I am to make a mistake. So I'm still happy that I tested it, as the Fang does eventually do a little better on the next boss we're going to show. But as for Akkha, let's just go ahead and jump to the end. I think this is a good spot to jump to with the Rapier, as it is the end of the kill, and it is a good thing I wanted to compare the Fang to the Rapier with, which is the final phase of Akkha. With the Fang versus the Rapier, I'm able to get through this phase a lot more consistently, and it feels like the Fang hard carries, but as you can see here, my Fang hard carried and I was able to 4-hit it. Very, very fortunate there. That doesn't happen all the time, and if I had it at a higher scale than 150, that wouldn't have happened. 352 kill time for Akkha, not too bad in the 150. Let's see how the Fang did. So, just like I mentioned with Baba, and I think I mentioned it a little bit in the Akkha clip as well, Fang did not perform as well as I wanted to here. In a 150 scale raid, Fang should be more DPS on average than the Rapier, but unfortunately, like again I just said, I actually had a slightly slower kill time. So a little bit of variance yet again, which is very unfortunate. Makes me wish I did multiple raids, but then how long would this video take if I had to compare 5 different clips of 5 different times killing Akkha? I guess 10 times technically, because once with Rapier, once with the Fang. So keep in mind that I am doing a 150 scale raid and there is variance to be had. But like I also said, with Kephri, there might be a little bit of a difference with Fang maybe actually showing how good it is. But that being said, it didn't perform bad here. Just because I had a slightly slower kill time does not mean that the Fang did bad. It's not like the Fang just absolutely noodled the entire time. It did quite well because it's a quite consistent weapon. It's just that Rapier absolutely showed its worth in the 150 raids, as the defense level of the targets in a 150 raid is not too bad at all. Going to the end of the Akkha fight with the Osmumten's Fang, it performed as I expected to, very, very well on the final phase of Akkha, and like I mentioned in the Rapier clip, that's where it really goes to shine. Even in like 300 raids, I think I've even done a 350 with the Fang here in the final phase, and it performed quite well. It just doesn't miss. That's what the weapon's pseudonym, if I could give it one, would be. Just a weapon that does not miss. It is absolutely insane at accuracy, not even just with inside the Tombs of a Masket, but I'll be showcasing how good it is outside the Tombs of a Masket as well. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get into the third and final boss I'll be showcasing for the Fang at the Tombs of a Masket. So the final demi-boss that we will be meeting within the Tombs of a Masket is Kephri, a very, very easy boss with stab, and as you can see, we popped off with the Rapier for our first few hits. I think that was a 47 into a 48, and I just hit a 49 there as well. So again, I think there's a little bit of variance here, and it may not be purely variance, it could just be at a 150 scale, these things have so low defense that you do just hit super often with the Rapier. That definitely could be it, and it could be very, very much less about variance, and me just being average here, and the Rapier being very good in the 150 scaled. But as I again mentioned, that once you start scaling things up to 300 or even just 200, 250s, you're going to notice a bigger difference with the Fang, and that is where the Fang starts getting good. And you definitely want to scale it up whenever possible. Don't get me wrong, if you could do 150s consistently, you're going to get purples eventually, but the more you scale it up, the higher chance you have to get a purple, and you are 2.5 times more likely to get a purple in a 300 raid than a 150. So definitely try to challenge yourself, but if you are seeing yourself dying a lot in the higher raids, then yeah, definitely go back on that. However, we're not here to focus on your raids, we're here to focus on how well Rapier is doing, and once again, Rapier is doing quite well, but I have mentioned in the past 2 clips that maybe this is the boss where it changes, and like I did just say, I think it is the boss where it changes, where we actually have a boss where Fang does slightly better. So let's go ahead and jump to the end of the kill, because this is still a fast kill with either weapon, and let's see exactly how fast it was though. So here we are at the end of a kill of Kephri. Pretty much as I said in the last clip, Rapier did very, very well here in a 150 raid. Again, I was a little shocked at how well it did, and again, I really wish I had hindsight and I was able to scale it up to maybe 200 and 250 to see a bigger comparison within the Fang and the Rapier. But like I did mention, this might be the boss where Fang gets better, so let's go ahead and jump to Fang and see how well it did. And here we are at Kephri with the Osmumten's Fang, and this is one I definitely want to mention because even outside of this scenario right here, where the Osmumten's Fangs absolutely did do slightly better than the Rapier on this specific kill, not only on 150s, but once you get to the higher invocations, in my opinion, this is where I noticed the biggest difference between Fang. I'd say Baba is definitely a close second. The Fang absolutely shreds in the higher invocations versus Rapier, but I've noticed the biggest difference here at Kephri. It's just, I just don't know. I just feel very consistent hits with the Fang versus the Rapier once I get to those higher invocations. And then there is actually using the special attack of the Osmumten's Fang as well. There's no really good special attack to use on Kephri, or if there is, I'm not too aware of it. So I just kind of throw my Osmumten Fang specs in it, and it actually does pretty well. I don't use them here as I do want to kind of account for variance a little, and I don't want to just the Fang to outshine the Rapier purely because I used Fang specs and the Rapier doesn't have a special attack, so I felt that would be a little unfair, so I did not use the Fang specs on any of the bosses that I killed for this video, so just keep that in mind. But as I mentioned, the Fang did quite well. As you've already seen, it's done quite well here, and it continued to do well throughout the entire kill, so let's see how much faster the kill ended up being. So here we are at the end of a Kephri kill, and like I've been kind of preluding this entire time, this Kephri kill ended up being a bit faster than my Rapier kill. It ended up being 3 minutes and 34 seconds, and with the Rapier, it took 3 minutes and 45 seconds. That was definitely a more accurate comparison of how good the Fang is versus a Rapier in a 150. It's not insanely better, it just isn't, and with variance of the Rapier having a higher max hit, I just ended up having better DPS there, but that won't happen all the time, and that's just how variance goes. One final thing I wanted to mention about the Rapier versus the Fang is when you're attacking the core, it is purely better to use the Rapier as the Fang has its max hit capped and the Rapier does not, and you always max hit and melee on the core. So maybe it is worth bringing the Rapier anyway if you are bringing a Fang just for the core to get like a 2 down or 3 down or whatever down you're going for. You will definitely get it more consistent if you have a 4-tick attack weapon and a weapon that actually can use its full max hit. So the next boss I will be testing, Grazi Rapier versus the Fang, is actually at Nex herself, and unfortunately I do not have a team, so I'll have to be doing this in the next free-for-all world, and you might be wondering how I'm going to be able to compare since I'm doing it in a free-to-all world, but I think I have a decent idea, and I am going to be using a DPS counter, and I'll kind of track how much damage I do to the boss, 5 kills with the Rapier, 5 kills with the Fang, and if you're curious, here's the setup I'm using. I understand Void setup is definitely not the best setup, but it is the setup I am going to choose to use, as this account cannot use full bandos and I cannot do this currently on my main account, but in the future when I plan to make more content like this, I'll definitely try to use my main account whenever available, and I'll also be using my main account for a boss later on in this video. With that being said, let's get into the kills and let's see how 5 kills with the Grazi Rapier goes. So there isn't too much to get into when it's Nex. If you've done Nex before, it is the same in mass as in normals, it's just in a mass world everything does happen a lot faster. Now when it comes to meleeing Nex, I melee during P1, you can't really melee during P2 or you're going to get absolutely shredded. I melee during P3, P4, and the final phase as well. I tried to melee whenever possible, though sometimes he puts up melee prey and I have to switch to a ranged weapon. So keep in mind some of the damage dealt was with my twisted bow, though when I test it out with the Fang I will also be using a twisted bow though, so there should not be very much variance there, but I feel like that is worth mentioning. All the damage done will not be with just my Rapier, a little bit done will be with my twisted bow. However, it doesn't track any damage that I deal with my minions, so that is super nice. On any minion damage I dealt with the twisted bow is not tracked by the damage counter. All the damage tracked is just damage done to Nex. So with that being said, let's see how much damage I was able to deal to Nex within 5 kills using the Grazi Rapier. So as you guys can see on the left side of my screen, I have done 721 damage to Nex within 5 kills. I do have to say though, I am pleasantly surprised with the Rapier. I haven't actually done any Rapier Nex. All my Nex kills have been with just T-bow only, and I'm, like I said, pleasantly surprised that Rapier actually hits really consistently on Nex. It's just is probably not worth using in a mass world because of how fast the phases go. So with that being said, I am going to take out the Fang, and maybe Fang is a different story. Maybe it is actually worth using in a mass world. Maybe I'll get an MVP. Probably not because I'm on a 45 defense account. But let's see what the damage is. 721 with the Rapier with 5 kills. Let's see what the Fang can do. Let's go ahead and reset the tracker and find out. Now we have Nex with the Osmumten's Fang. Now it started off a little slow, as you can see here. I missed my first few hits and I was thinking, oh no, this is going to be awful. Fang is not going to at all outperform the Rapier, and I was kind of second guessing the Fang, but it turned around very quickly, and that's all I have to say. Before you see the damage comparison, I'm telling you right now, you may not even believe the damage comparison because of how big of a difference it is, but I should mention that the team size got slightly smaller with the Fang versus the Rapier. As you can just tell, it seems like a few people were logging off, but it was not big enough of a difference where the damage difference is strictly because of the group size. There's definitely extra damage because the fight took a slightly bit longer, but you'll see the big damage difference, and yeah, there's no mistake in this one. Like I did with the 150s, the Fang is very clearly better, and I am very excited to show you guys the damage. And here it is, the damage from 5 kills at next with the Fang versus the Rapier. 5 kills with the Fang got me 1,791 damage versus the 721 damage I got with 5 kills with the Rapier. That's actually nuts. I did mention the team size was slightly smaller, as it seems like people are doing less and less FMA just at this hour. I can't really say much about that. I didn't plan to do it at a specific hour. It just seems less people are doing it at the moment. Probably something to do with the system update coming into effect, but it is what it is, and I didn't get an extra 1,000 damage just because the team size was slightly smaller. I got the extra 1,000 damage because the Fang is nuts. I did not use the spec a single time, I should mention that, just because I really wanted to see the full comparison. And Jesus, I cannot like say enough with how good the Fang was here. With the 150s that I just did at the Tombs of a Masket, it wasn't very obvious that the Fang was better. In fact, the Rapier outperformed it slightly in Baba and at Akkha, but there is no question here. The Fang is disgusting at next. If you guys plan on doing any next in the future, highly recommend bringing the Fang. I'm pretty sure it is best in slot, even over Xeric Crossbow and Twisted Bow, unless you're talking about P2, because if you try to use the Fang on P2, you're going to get shredded. But I really just cannot, like, get over how good the Fang was here. But we still have 2 more bosses to test, and I definitely want to wait for the system update before I go to the next boss, which is going to be the Corporeal Beast. Now, it's not going to be completely fair if I use Rapier versus the Fang at the Corporeal Beast, as Rapier just does not do full damage to the Corporeal Beast, and the Fang does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a Z Spear, and I'm going to test both of them on my main account. So I'll see you guys there. Before we jump straight into the Corporeal Beast testing, I do just want to quickly show you guys the DPS comparison of the Zamorakian Spear and the Fang in max strength bonus. As you can see, I have the Zamorakian Spear hitting 49s and the Fang hitting 50s, though the Fang is 1/6 slower, but it is quite a bit more accurate, though I have not reduced any of Corporeal Beast's defensive stats, which I will be doing since I am not too experienced with the whole dying at Corp and having piles of food on the ground and trying to tank Corp the entire time. That may be a better way of killing it now that the Fang is super accurate against the Corp without any stats reduce, but since I am not familiar with it, I will probably mess up and end up dying, so for the kills I'll be doing, just keep in mind I will be reducing the stats. So let's go ahead and reduce the stats. We'll hit 3 Warhammer specs, 20 Arclight specs, and 200 BGS damage, which is going to get Corp down to no stats, so it'll be like we're killing a chicken. And as you can see, after doing that, the Fang has a 99.99% probably repeating accuracy, so basically you just don't miss with the Fang, and the Spear is still quite accurate. And because the Spear is a 4-tick weapon versus a 5-tick weapon, the Spear does come out on top, but we will be testing that, so let's go ahead and hop on my main account now and do some testing. So as I previously mentioned, I am going to be speccing Corp down till he has no stats, and then I'm going to kill it once with the Spear, and then once with the Fang, and I am going to be doing this on Grey's Cat, so I have normal gear this time. I'll have my Dragon Defender and stuff like that. In fact, here is the gear I'm rocking for those curious, and yeah, let's see how it goes. So I don't want to spend too much time talking here, as there really isn't too much to talk about. When you lower Corp stats down to 0, you're expected to pretty much hit every single time, even if you're using a Z-Spear, which is not anywhere near as accurate as the Fang. But I think the biggest thing to say here is that if you plan on doing Corp without reducing the spec, maybe you're doing Corp in like a 5-man, maybe you're doing it in a mass world. And actually, I just thought about this right this second, but if you are doing it in a mass world, probably your best bet at getting the drop would be to use the Fang. And if you were using it as a 5-man and you're not reducing the specs all the way, maybe also just use the Fang. Maybe you're just using 1 BGS spec and then throw the Fangs in. As you can see, I'm saying Fang quite a lot because it is quite a good weapon to use here. So let's go ahead and switch to the POV of the Fang. So here we are towards the end of the Corp kill with the Osmumten's Fang. And like I said, there isn't too much to talk about here. So that is why I wanted to start the recording towards the end of the kill. And yeah, as you can see, the Fang is doing quite well. I did have to eat a little bit during this kill, so it may have been slower because of that reason. But if you are curious about the times, it took me 3 minutes and 50 seconds to kill the Corp with the Z Spear, and then with the Fang it took me 4 minutes and 40 seconds to kill it with the Fang. So a decent bit slower because the stats were 0, and any more stats I left on it is just going to make the Fang better and better. I don't know at the point where the Fang gets better, but for example, if, like I said, if you're doing a 5-man, Fang is definitely better. The final place I did want to test the Osmumten's Fang is going to be the Chambers of Xeric, and I might regret this because I kind of want to put this challenge on myself where I am not going to be bringing a Dragon Warhammer. I want to test it and its full might where it's really good against high defense targets. So let's see exactly how good, and let's not lower the defense of Olm's hand, but of course, I want something to compare it to, so I'll be doing this with Rapier, and I am not looking forward to killing Olmham without Dragon Warhammering and using Rapier the entire time. I know for a fact the difference is going to be monumental just because of how the Fang works, but I still just want to show you guys, so I'm going to put myself through the entire pain of doing Olm without using a Dragon Warhammer twice, one with the Fang, one with the Rapier, so let's go ahead and get to that. And here we are, the raid with the Rapier and no Dragon Warhammer. I have now completed the raid with both the Rapier and the Fang, and both of which did not have a Dragon Warhammer, so it's a little annoying. I definitely hit a lot of zeros with the Rapier, as you will see in this clip here, and I did not hit as many with the Fang. I was very impressed, but I'll get over that here in a second and explain how well both of them did. But I did make a small mistake, but it's pretty funny because even with the small mistake that I made, the Fang ended up being a minute faster. The Rapier time was 15:15 and the Fang time was 14:15 when it comes to time to complete the entire Olm phase, meaning P1, P2, and P3 and the head phase. So that is the time it took to do both of them. With the current gear and stats I have, I do have a Twisted Bow and a Sanguinesti staff, so that definitely improved my time by quite a bit, but not having a Warhammer definitely slowed down my time by quite a bit. So I want to go ahead and jump over to the Fang, and specifically to the part where I messed up. So here I am with the Fang clip, and here's the mistake I was talking about. I accidentally killed the mage hand while the melee hand was at full HP, so yes, I had to kill the mage hand twice. And if you're curious, the time that I gave you earlier, the 14:15 compared to the 15:15 with the Rapier, was including killing the mage hand twice. So even making that giant mistake, basically the mage hand having 1200 HP, I was able to get a minute faster than my other time with the Rapier. So it really shows just how consistent the DPS is with the Fang. The DPS, as you can see, is very consistent with the Fang. I did just hit 0 as I said that right there, but I really didn't hit too many zeros. Didn't even notice that I didn't hit a Warhammer, to be completely honest, and I can't imagine hitting a Warhammer and seeing how well that goes. But I want to go ahead and calculate how long it would have been if I didn't have to kill the mage hand twice, so I am going to go ahead and see how long it took me to kill the mage hand the second time. I just went ahead and calculated how long it took me to kill the mage hand the second time, and it took me a good minute and 15 seconds, so that means, in theory, if I didn't make that giant mistake, the Fang would have been 2 minutes and 15 seconds faster than the Rapier without hitting any Warhammers. So it really goes to show how good this weapon is on a target with high defense. Next was the best example, I think, in this video. So I am back here at the Grand Exchange, and I am not here just to end my video. I am here to actually end my friendship with the Rapier, because Osmumten's Fang is now my new best friend. Wow, the Rapier has gone down quite a bit, and I think a lot of people are realizing how good the Fang is, and especially since the Fang keeps dropping in price, the Rapier is due to do the same. The good news is I actually bought my Rapier for an extremely cheap price, so even selling it for 125 mil is a lot less than it was going for recently. I'm still actually making money. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but I definitely didn't pay 125 mil. So 123 mil, I'm going to take that, and now I am just going to use my Fang whenever I need to stab something, and I don't really need to worry about the Rapier. If I'm looking for a 4-tick weapon, I'll probably go for the Inquisitor Mace, as it is extremely cheap right now, and I do have full Inquisitor, so it'll be a nice combo with that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on this Osmumten's Fang, but before I go, one final thing I do want to mention is I did test it on the 4 bosses I thought it would perform the best, but there are definitely more bosses where the Fang may even be best in slot, and if not best in slot, it might actually perform very well. For example, the Fang has a slash option, so if you were to take it to Theater of Blood, I'm sure it would perform very well there, and maybe any other boss that is weak to slash or stab and has high defense, the Fang is probably either best in slot or just very, very good there. If you guys want me to test any new weapon, gear, or anything like that came out with the Tombs of a Mascot, or any specific piece of content. For example, the leaf-bladed battle axe is a weapon I'm thinking about making a video on. I also want to make a video on the staff when it goes down, like this fine gentleman has here. I definitely want to make a video on the light bearer, as I feel like it is a very good tech item that could be taken to a lot of places where people don't currently bring it. So with that being said, I do have to end this video here, but I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys pick yourself up an Osmumten's Fang if you're an Iron Man from the actual raid, and if not, you know, it's only 200 mil right now. That's not too bad of a price. So with all that being said, I hope to see you guys in another video very soon, and I hope you guys have a good day, and yeah, I'll see you then.